Welcome to OLC 4.0. This is term 2A. This is class 27, and we are looking at assignment 38 today and also double negatives. Oh, sorry, I find the PowerPoint moves a little bit slow. Whenever you hand in work, please send it to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. This way the secretary can log that you submitted the work. Please include your full name, course name, assignment number and name, and label the rough and good draft, please. My Facebook and YouTube are both the same, capital G, capital P, ERCY space, capital WAHSA. And if you need to message me about an assignment, jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. Okay, today's work, we are going to understand what constitutes a double negative, understand how to correct a double negative in writing, understand a procedural paragraph, understand how to use a graphic organizer to help you outline your ideas, apply these understandings to write a procedural paragraph using a graphic organizer, and then practice editing our procedural paragraph. Okay, so first of all, just in general, what's a negative? Using a negative in a sentence is a way to indicate the opposite of what the verb would be describing as happening. I am finished my book. I am not finished my book. Mom said I can go to the party. Mom said I cannot go to the party. Some other negative words are things like no, not, nobody, nothing, none, never, hardly, scarcely, barely, and only. So there was nobody in the room. He wanted nothing to eat. He never went running at night. He could hardly move after his fall down the stairs. The family barely had any food in the house. There was scarcely any jobs in the Depression. You can pick only one snack to eat on the plane. The other types of negative words are the negative contractions, which we're going to talk about on the next slide. Sometimes we may not notice a negative when it's hidden in its contraction form because we're not actually seeing the word not. We know it's there, but we're not seeing it, so we may kind of miss it. So a contraction is just when two words are joined together to make a single word with some of the letters missing, which are indicated by an apostrophe. So for example, can plus not equals can't. We put the apostrophe to show that the O is missing. Are plus not equals aren't. And again, the apostrophe shows that that O is missing. For example, I cannot lend you $20. I can't lend you $20. They both mean exactly the same thing, but people might not notice the negative part of that. Okay, here are some of the other negative contractions. Could plus not is couldn't. Is plus not is isn't. Was plus not is wasn't. Were plus not is weren't. Will plus not is won't. Would plus not is wouldn't. Should plus not is shouldn't. Does plus not is doesn't. Do plus not is don't. Did plus not is didn't. Might plus not is mightn't. Doesn't get said very often, but it does occur. Must plus not is mustn't. Have plus not is haven't. Has plus not is hasn't. And had plus not is hadn't. And we have can't and aren't from the previous page. There are a few slang contractions. I'm just mentioning them for the purposes of conversation because they don't generally show up in writing, although you might see them in dialogue in a novel, for example. So there's not really a contraction for I am not. There is apparently a phrase called I am't, but you rarely hear it. I've never heard anybody say it that way. Usually it gets changed to I ain't. However, that's generally considered kind of non-standard English, and it's not used in formal writing. It is used casually, and it can sometimes lead to that double negative issue when it is used. I ain't never seen John be mean to people. Well, ain't and never kind of cancel each other out. Sometimes people add more negatives to their speech because they're trying to emphasize the concept. So for example, I would not let you go hungry might become, I would not never let you go hungry. And they're trying to emphasize it like never, 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 right? But instead, in English, it's considered that the two cancel each other out logically. And so it end up saying the opposite of what you meant. So in this case, this person was unintentionally saying, I would let you go hungry. Now, again, in normal speech, we know what people mean when they say that, but in writing, it's considered poor writing, and you're not supposed to use those kind of double negatives. Here are some other examples of double negatives in a sense. No one would never tell the police what you did. I promise you there was not nothing in that box. She could never scarcely stand to look at him after what he did. There was never no money in the jar when I saw it. That won't do you no good. I didn't take nothing from the till. My boyfriend didn't never run around on me. He's not going nowhere. Okay. Changing the no in the any in a compound word is one way to get rid of a double negative. So nowhere becomes anywhere. I am not going nowhere is a double negative, but you can fix it with anywhere. I am not going anywhere. That's totally acceptable. No one you can change to anyone. So she never lets no one borrow her car. If I change it to anyone, it becomes okay. She never lets anyone borrow her car. Nothing can become anything. That boy doesn't know nothing about the robbery. That boy doesn't know anything about the robbery. So that's one way to change double negatives. All right. Sometimes fixing a double negative can be as simple as taking away the extra negative. So he never caused me no harm. I can just change it to he never caused me harm. I haven't never heard of him. I never heard of him. She wouldn't never harm no one. She wouldn't harm anyone. That's one of those ones we changed there. Other times you need to change the extra negative to a positive word. He is never stealing nothing from me. He is never stealing anything from me. I don't have no drugs on me. I don't have any drugs on me. Okay. We're moving on to the idea of graphic organizers. A graphic organizer is just a visual display that demonstrates relationships between facts, concepts, and ideas. It specifically guides the user's thinking as they build up and fill in the graphic organizer. There are all sorts of graphic organizers depending on the purpose of the activity you're doing. It could be used to help you summarize information or prioritize important facts, order events, make connections or predictions, organize information for different types of writing purposes. Today, we're going to use an organizer to help us write down a task in a procedural format, and it's specifically designed to help us break down the steps in chronological order. I did just kind of want to do a quick review of other types of graphic organizers, though, before we move on. We looked at graphic organizer a little bit earlier when we were looking at visuals for the brochure assignment. This one is considered one that shows a hierarchy, like who's in charge of whom. So for example, the top boss would be here, their kind of deputy bosses there, maybe the department heads here, and it just kind of shows who's in charge. It can be useful if you work in a big organization to know who to talk to about like who's in charge of marketing versus who's in charge of invoicing versus who's in charge of hiring kind of thing. This is considered a type of grid. It's used to show attributes or properties. You could put numbers here or amounts. It's just a great way to organize information in a very simple format. This one shows a timeline of events. They're often used to show historical events. You might also see them used in project planning, like, okay, we're here by, May, we need to be here. By June, we need to be here. And it would kind of be a way of organizing visually so people could see what has to be done when. Okay. This is a pyramid. It's meant to show some sort of process. So the larger base might show a certain amount of time, or it might show what step comes first, then the next step, and then the last step on top. This type of organizer is used to show events that happen over and over again. For example, the seasons changing, the life cycle of a butterfly. Any sort of process that works in a cycle can be shown in this kind of format. Okay. We often use organizers to help with the writing process because it can help us to see and remember the structure of the writing. Like I know I've used the concept of the hamburger format over and over and over again, but the reason is because it's a visual that kind of sticks with people. And when you go to write, you can instantly remember it because you remember the visual. If I just said, opening sentence comes first, then the body details and the closing details, you might not remember, but everybody can remember a hamburger. Here's my opening sentence, there's my closing sentence, and here's all my details. And their example is the topic sentence is in the Star Wars universe, lightsabers are powerful tools. Supporting detail, lightsabers can cut through almost anything. Another supporting detail, lightsabers can deflect blaster bolts. Another supporting detail, skilled Jedi can use lightsabers to absorb force lighting. And then our conclusion, it takes a lot of practice to learn how to use a lightsaber. This is another one. This is for writing a persuasive organizer. So here would be your opinion or your argument. You'd give a reason, a reason, a reason. A counterclaim is a compelling argument the opposite side might make. So if you were in favor of capital punishment, someone else might have a reason why they're against it. You would list it so that you can argue against it, basically, so you can find a way to think of it. And then what would your conclusion be? This one I was showing in one of my other classes. If you're doing a longer essay, this is one way to organize it. So you put your essay topic in the middle, and then you've got 4 paragraphs. So you're the main theme of one paragraph, main theme of your second, your third, your fourth, and then your supporting sentences or details. If you're doing a much longer writing, this can be a way to help organize your thoughts so they don't get kind of jumbled when you're doing essays and things like that. This is a type of organizer for using procedural text. We're going to be using something very similar. This is the kind of thing I would have used in elementary school, which you probably have seen. There'd be a picture and then matching details, picture, matching details, picture, matching details. Procedural text is explaining how to do things, and sometimes it's stuff that um, it's really much easier to explain if you just have a picture of it. So things like for example, how to fix the windshield wiper on your car. Like I could read about that, but if I actually had to do it, which I did the other day, I would look online for the pictures so I could see what the parts look like or how to pick a door lock or things like that. Sometimes the pictures can give you as much information as the words for these kind of things. So procedural texts are all around us. We see procedural texts all the time. Basically, they just tell us the steps to do something. It might be something like a recipe or a craft project, how to fix a car, how to learn a certain type of social skill, how to do a certain type of math problem, or anything you want to do that requires doing things in a certain order. I'm going to show you an example here. Will this work? Let me see. Oh, okay, I've been having problems getting these things to work. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can do it this way. Like I said, I don't know why, but for some reason these things work really well in Google Slides and not so well in PowerPoint. Here we go. I didn't just save this because there's so many pictures. It was hard to save. So here she kind of does like a little sales thing up top. It's so easy to make a Q-tip flower painting and gives you kind of a brief overview. And then, okay, so here it goes. Any kind of procedural text usually has what kind of materials, what kind of equipment you're going to need. If it was a recipe, that's where you'd find all the ingredients. And then they kind of go through step by step. So here she's got step 1, find what you need, gather your supplies and materials. Gosh, my computer's went dead for a second, but it's still working. Okay, that was very strange. All right, step 2, cut out and trace the pot template. Print out the free flower pot template on regular printer paper and cut out one of the pots. Cut a piece of cardstock in half and place one half in front of you. Then trace the flower pot template onto the bottom of the paper. So I want to point out, step 2 may actually have 2 or 3 sentences explaining the step. It's not necessarily a step for each sentence. And then we've got step 3, paint the stems and leaves. And they've got little pictures showing you paint 3 to 6 thick green lines coming out from the pot to make the flower stems. Start from the center of the pot and paint one stem going straight up, then angle the outer stems towards the edge of the paper. Add simple brush strokes coming off the stems to create leaves. This will give the plant a fuller look. Wait a few minutes for the green paint to dry. Step 5, paint flower petals with Q-tips. Tape together 5 Q-tips in a bundle, or you could wrap an elastic around them. Add 3 shades. Oh gosh, and the computer's gone dead again. And it's back on. So I don't know how well this recording is going to go today. We will see. So dip the Q-tip bundle into the center of the paint. Wow. Stamp the paint covered Q-tips onto the top of the green stems until you run out of paint. See how the picture here shows you how you'd have the 3 little colors of the paint really close together? That kind of picture is so much more helpful than just the words. All right, and then repeat dipping the Q-tips in paint and dabbing them onto the green stems again and again. Be sure to stamp the Q-tips at different angles, rotate the bundle, and use different amounts of pressure to get unique looking blooms. Continue until you're happy with your flowers. So that's one example of a procedural text. I'm going to grab a recipe real quick, just kind of while I'm here, just to kind of show you what I mean. Something really simple like chocolate chip cookies. Okay. Usually, okay, so there you go. There's kind of a quick description up top, but then you see your ingredient list of everything you need. And then you've got your instructions, and they've even numbered them. 1, whisk the flour, baking soda, cornstarch, and salt together in a large bowl. Set it aside. Here you got a whole bunch of sentences, but they're calling that the second step. In a medium bowl, whisk the melted butter, brown sugar, and granulated sugar together until no brown sugar lumps remain. Whisk in the egg and egg yolk. Finally, whisk in the vanilla extract. The mixture will be thin. Pour into dry ingredients and mix together with a large spoon or rubber spatula. The dough will be very soft, thick, and appear greasy. Fold in the chocolate chips. The chocolate chips may not stick to the dough because of the melted butter, but do your best to combine them. By the way, I would consider this way more than one step. Cover the dough tightly and chill in the refrigerator for at least 2 to 3 hours or up to 3 days. Ooh, I would not do 3 days with eggs. I highly recommend chilling the cookie dough overnight for less spreading. Take the dough out of the refrigerator and allow it to soften slightly at room temperature for 10 minutes. Preheat oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. Line large baking sheets with parchment paper or silicone baking mats and set aside. Using a cookie scoop or tablespoon, measuring spoon, that's poorly phrased, measure 3 scant tablespoons of dough for extra large cookies or 2 heaping tablespoons for medium large cookies. Roll into a ball, making sure the shape is taller rather than wide, almost like a cylinder. This helps the cookies to bake up thicker. Repeat with the remaining dough. Place 8 to 9 balls of dough on each cookie sheet. Bake the cookies for 12 to 13 minutes or until the edges are very lightly browned. Extra large cookies can take closer to 14 minutes. The centers will look very soft, but the cookies will continue to set as they cool. Cool on the baking sheet for 10 minutes. Meanwhile, press a few extra chocolate chips into the tops of the warm cookies. This is optional and only for looks. After 10 minutes of cooling on the baking sheets, transfer cookies to a wire rack to cool completely. Cookies stay fresh, covered at room temperature for up to 1 week. Okay, so that's 2 examples of procedural text. Procedural texts are often written in an imperative or a command form of the sentence. In the imperative format, we usually use the verb first in the sentence. Picture yourself like you're a king and you're commanding your servants to do something. It's going to sound very bossy. Clean your room, pick up the hammer, dip your paintbrush in the water, Measure the word carefully. Some of you might be wondering, what happened to the subject? Don't we always need a subject? We do, but in command format, it's kind of implied because the subject is always you. You need to do this. So they just kind of start with the verb. It does sound a little funny if you get used to the other format, but we speak this way all the time to, like, for example, our children or something. Sometimes instead of the verb being the very first word in the sentence, we'll end up using a word instead that helps indicate the sequence or the order right before the word. So things like first, next, then, after that, finally. It could also be the ordinal words, things like first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. This is more common if there's a lot of steps or if they absolutely have to be done in a specific way. Because it kind of depends on what you're doing. Some things like the painting, it probably doesn't matter if you do it in exactly the right way. But like making the cookies, you kind of have to do that in order, or fixing a car, whatever. All right, so here is our assignment. For some reason, this class always goes very fast. Okay, assignment 38, using an organizer for an information paragraph. This is worth 10 marks. You've just learned how to create a resume with a template on paper. We did that yesterday. A resume can also be created on a computer using Microsoft Word. For this assignment, you will describe the basics of how to turn on a computer and open Microsoft Office Word. Your purpose for writing this information paragraph is to inform. Your audience is an adult who has never turned on a computer. How would this person even get started doing this? Use the organizer that follows to guide your writing. This organizer, when completed, will serve as a rough copy of your paragraph that will have at least 5 to 6 sentences. So the title is How to Turn on a Computer and Use Microsoft Word. And the topic sentence, they're telling you this is how you're going to start your paragraph. This is how you, and you'd explain what you're about to do. And then your steps. First, this, second, that, next, do that, then whatever. You can use more steps if you need to, right? Just keep on adding. After that, and then finally, closing sentence. So this is how you, and you restate what your topic is, okay? After you've done all that and your rough copy, then you're going to write over your good final copy of the paragraph. All right. First, some quick notes on the assignment. It talks about teaching someone how to use Microsoft Word, but not everybody may have Microsoft Word. If you've used it to do assignments and are familiar with it, that's great. If you haven't used Microsoft Word, some other alternatives are things like Google Docs, Mac Pages, Word Perfect, whatever other word processing program you've used is fine. Just make sure it's obvious in the title what word processing program you're using, okay? They all work in very similar ways, so it doesn't really change the content of the assignment particularly. But I know some people might get stressed out if they're like, but I've never used Microsoft Word. Like, it's okay, it doesn't really matter. Okay, but it is really important to get the order of steps correct. Remember that for this assignment, you have to start with helping them turn on the computer. And I know that if you're familiar with computers, that sounds like crazy easy. So for the purposes of this assignment, picture someone much older who has never used a computer at all. So for example, my mom is like 85 years old and she has never used a computer. She never will. She hates technology. She would be so completely overwhelmed if I said to her, go turn on the computer. She wouldn't even know where to start. So this is an exercise where I'll be looking at how clearly you give your directions, right? You're going to need to really break it down into small steps so the audience doesn't get confused. I can't just say like, turn the power button on, because someone like my mom would go, well, what button's the power button? And she would just start pressing every single button and, make the computer explode or something. So you might have to like, the power button will be in this position and you will need to press it. You'll know it's on when whatever kind of cue you've got. Remember to use directional words, things like top, bottom, right, left, and don't forget to label what tool they're using. Keyboard, mouse, right? cursor, all those kind of things. Someone who's not familiar with a computer is not necessarily going to know what those things are. So example, I was saying, you need to be very specific. Where is the button? For the purposes of this assignment, you can just assume that they have the exact same computer as you, so it's in the exact same place. Is there any way that you're going to know if it worked? How long will it take to show up on your screen, right? You don't want to end up in a situation the person is like pressing that button repeatedly because the screen didn't turn on immediately, and all they're really doing is turning the computer on and off. Do you need a password or a username for that computer? How will they find the word processing program? What do they look for? Sometimes the best way to do an assignment like this, if you're having trouble breaking down the steps, is actually turn off your own computer and do each step as you go, write it down. So you turn off your computer. Okay, turn on the power button. Where was it? How do I know it's on? Okay, so now what happens? Now what do I do with my password? Okay, now how do I find the word processing program? How do I get it to go on? That kind of thing. Um, yes, okay, we've said this already, but make sure the steps are in the right order. You wouldn't tell someone how to format a page before you told them how to turn on the computer, obviously. But sometimes it can be less obvious that we've told something out of order, especially if it's something that we know how to do very quickly ourselves. This is what I'm talking about. You can turn off your computer. After you've done your writing, try and go through what you've written, follow your own instructions and see, did it work or did you forget a step? Did you get something out of order? Okay. Make sure you do not have the organizer here. What? Oh, yeah. Okay. So the good copy is not going to have the organizer. The good copy is where you're going to put it all together and it's just going to be like in a paragraph format. You want to include all the words that were written. Like you want to have the title, you want to have the topic sentence. Even though those parts are typed, it's kind of assumed that you're adopting them as your own words, and we don't want you just to kind of skip them, okay? Um, be sure that your steps are written in command format, verb first, no subject. Also be sure that the steps are clear and easy to understand and follow. Remember that you might need more than one sentence per step. Make sure the final product is an actual paragraph and not simply a list. Okay, so here is a sample paragraph. And I'm showing this to you because you can see how crazy detailed you can get when you're talking about something even really, really simple. Okay, hang on a second. Okay, how to drive a car. This is how to begin driving a car. First, make sure you have the car keys. Then, unlock the doors and get in the car. Next, pull the seatbelt across your chest and hips and fasten it into the buckle on the, oh, I said left-hand side, but it's going to be right-hand side, on the right-hand side of the seat. After that, check behind you for small children, pets, or obstacles like bikes that you could run over. Make sure they are out of the way before you continue. Then, put your keys in the ignition slot, which is located to the right of the steering wheel. Turn the key to the right. At the same time, step on the gas pedal gently, which is the pedal on the far right. If you hear the engine start up, then you have done this correctly. If it didn't turn on, wait 5 minutes and try again. So all these details and all we've really gotten is the car turned on. That's it. So I want to kind of show you, here are our sequence words. Okay, good. I'm going to underline them first. Then I'm underlining these because I am going to be looking for them when I read your assignment. Okay, these are a specific thing. They have to appear in procedural writing, and you will lose marks if I don't see them. Okay. I should have a closing sentence, something like, okay, congratulations. Now you are ready to drive. Right? I shouldn't just end at the at there. I don't need both exclamation point, and a period. Okay, the other thing is I want you to notice the format where we're talking about the verb first thing. So for example, we've got make sure, it's kind of a compound one here. Unlock the doors, what happened there? Hang on a second. That was very strange. Okay, unlock the doors, there we go. Get in the car, and you can see there's no subject. There's not I do this or you do that. We just kind of skip it and go right to the verb. Pull the seatbelt across your hips, fasten it into the buckle. After that, check behind you. Make sure, oh, again, I don't know what I'm doing there. I'm triggering some sort of automatic thing. There we go. Then put your keys in the ignition slot. Turn the key. Step on the gas pedal. If you hear the engine start up, then you've done this correctly. This one is not in the command format because they're explaining something rather than telling you a step. If it didn't turn on, wait 5 minutes and try again. Okay, so that's a sample paragraph of how to write a procedural text. Editing checklist. You need to make sure once you've done your rough copy that you go through and do your editing. Check for spelling mistakes, check for punctuation mistakes, check for capitalization mistakes, and check for usage mistakes. Okay. I do find that most spell checking software and computers do a pretty good job with catching spelling errors. However, keep in mind that they often won't catch certain kinds of errors. The word is spelled correctly, but it's the wrong word. Like if I used the word, I think here, I don't know, table, and I meant to use the word desk, it's still spelled correctly. It's just the wrong word for what I wanted. The verb is spelled correctly, but it doesn't match the subject. That's what we call subject-verb agreement, where they both need to be plural or they both need to be singular. He runs to the store is fine, but if I made the mistake, he run to the store, I don't think it'll catch it. Yeah, even though it's a mistake and it kind of relates to spelling, it's not enough of a spelling error for the computer to register it. The verb is spelled correctly, but it doesn't match the right verb tense you wanted. Remember, we have like 12 different verb tense. This is one of the common issues where people will flip-flop back and forth between like past tense and present tense. If you can see for these are generally written in present tense format. Get in, fasten your car, turn, step. It's because you're writing it as if the person is right in front of you and you're telling them what to do step by step. So we don't talk about it in past tense because the person hasn't done it yet. Okay. Capitalization rules. In general, we use lowercase letters when we write, except for when we want to emphasize certain things. So here are some of the places that we add capital letters. There's a big long list, but these are the main ones. The beginning of a sentence, the word I, names of people or pets, days of the week, months of the year, names of places like cities, provinces, countries, or continents, titles of magazines, newspapers, books, movies, songs, and games. So for example, if I was writing about the Sioux Bulletin, oh, it corrected it itself there. Okay. I would also want the B to be a capital as well. Okay. The beginning of the sentence, one thing I've been noticing a lot lately is some people have an M. I'm going to give you an example here. When they do their writing, let me see if I can find the right kind of text here. Hang on, let me see if this one will do it. Okay. Where they do their writing and it's kind of this loose M and they don't use the capital. I'm not sure if they think it looks like a capital. And for some reason, it's always when it's an M. I don't know why it's happening, but I'm seeing it happen a lot lately. So that needs to be taken away and become a capital M. See how the capital M is bigger and it's pointy on top and not round on top? I know it sounds fussy, but if it's not a capital letter, it's very obvious, okay? The other one is the word I. I still get lots of people handing in I's like that. Or it'll come up when people are writing like a contraction like I'm. Now the computer auto-corrected that, but not all computers will. I know this because I'm getting them. I'll will come up. I'd, all those kind of ones. It has to be the capital I, not the lowercase I, because you're referring to a person. It's yourself, but you're still a person. And so we capitalize it the same way we'd capitalize a name, okay? This one, I think originally I had like a lowercase j, which is another common mistake. See how it goes low, but for a capital J, it sits up on the line. Those are small fussy things, but if you're doing handwriting, it is something you have to be aware of. Okay, punctuation issues. I don't have space to go over every possible punctuation issues because there's a lot, but these are some of the common ones. Using quotation marks incorrectly. The biggest thing I see right now is people will hand me in, they'll do a quotation like, I want candy, said Jack. They've opened the quote here, but they forgot to close the quote here. Almost everybody starts, but a lot of people forget to close that quote. Using a comma when it needs to be a period. This is where people are joining sentences like, I love going camping. We love to fish. Okay, we can't join two sentences with just a comma. I could use a conjunction and say, and we love to fish, and that's fine. That's a big one, and I see that a lot, okay? Or remember that this could be joined with a semicolon. I could have said, I love going, oops, sorry, that went weird. I love going camping, semicolon, we love to fish. That's a little bit trickier, but it's there. So those are the common punctuation issues I'm seeing right now. The other one is, for some reason, apostrophes. A lot of times I'm seeing people use apostrophes when they're trying to show plural. So like if the word is cups, they're writing cups, but we only need the apostrophe S if it's showing belonging. So if I said those are Beth's books, then I need an apostrophe S. But I don't need an apostrophe on just the word books because it doesn't belong anywhere, okay? The other place we show apostrophes is contractions. Most people are fine with that. Okay, I want to point out there's a lot of videos on proofreading and editing aimed at adults and university students. Editing can be a little bit tricky. Sorry about that. But even professional writers make grammatical mistakes or punctuation errors when they're working quickly. And there is no shame to needing to check your work for errors. I've found plenty of my own errors that way. You guys have seen, even though I go over this, I still find errors sometimes. Again, we'll see if this was one that has like a little proofreading. Well, let me do it. Here we go. Okay. Hang on a second. Oh, sorry, I triggered something there. Okay. We had a power outage earlier today, as I'm sure everybody knows. So I deliberately switched to PowerPoint for this instead of
Struggling to write your emails? You should try WordTune.
oh,
With WordTune, you can take your writing to the
Writing is rewriting. That's what they say. And it's true. But writing is also proofreading. Proofreading helps you pinpoint areas that need rewriting, as well as smaller errors in grammar, punctuation, spelling, and wording. Before we get started, I know exactly what you're thinking. Isn't that what spell check is for? And it's true. For the most part, spelling and grammar check programs will catch and help you fix the majority of errors, but these tools aren't perfect. Spell and grammar checks won't catch it when you use an incorrect word, but spell it correctly, and it won't catch more significant grammar mistakes. Remember, these errors can impact how others view you at work and in your personal life. Moving on, here are 7 proofreading tips that can help you perfect your writing. First, take some time off between drafts. It can be hard to do this if you're working on a deadline, but even taking 15 minutes away from a piece of writing can help give you perspective on what you've just written. The newer something looks when you come back to it, the better you'll be able to see its strengths and flaws. If you have the time, take a day or 2 off between drafts. Second, tackle big picture items first. Is your writing well organized? Is the tone consistent throughout? Have you presented every idea you intended to? And do they all flow well together? Getting the puzzle pieces into their rightful places is the first step in proofreading. Line editing, the part where you take care of small spelling, grammar, and punctuation errors, can come later. Third, tackle one type of potential error at a time. Once the big picture stuff is out of the way, you can focus on more specific issues. You could start with sentence structure or word choice, ensuring every sentence is constructed coherently with the exact right words. Then you could move on to spelling and punctuation. It may seem tedious, but multiple passes through your work give you many chances to make it as perfect as possible. Fourth, print it out. Your eyes catch different things on paper than they do on screen. You don't necessarily need to print out every draft, but one of them, probably closer to the end, should ideally be done on paper. Fifth, know what you don't know. If there are certain rules you need to look up every time, like lay versus lie or who versus whom, don't be afraid to do so. If there's any item you're not sure about, there's no shame in finding out what's right and what's not. It's better to spend the time up front to make sure everything is correct than to send out a supposedly final draft with errors in it. Sixth, check facts. Whether you're including statistics, historical dates, or even citing someone's name, you want to be 100% certain that your facts are correct. There are plenty of circumstances that can lead to errors regarding facts, including typos, incorrect notes, and memory lapses, but making sure to double check them during the proofreading process can ensure you don't have any embarrassing mistakes in your final draft. Seventh, read your work out loud. Even if your work isn't meant to be read aloud or performed in its final state, reading your writing out loud will still help you find tricky phrasing and lapses in tone that readers might trip over. Even when reading in our heads, we still hear a sort of narration, so it's important to make sure language flows no matter what. If the piece of writing is particularly important, such as something you're submitting to supervisors, I recommend rereading your work in sections if applicable until you find no mistakes to fix. Mistakes, whether they appear in grammar, punctuation, or facts, coupled with missteps in tone and structure, make for a difficult read while reducing the author's credibility. Even when you're working on a tight turnaround, don't skimp on proofreading. It can be the difference between failure and success for a writer. If you follow these best practices for proofreading every time you write a piece, you can be sure you're presenting the best version of your material to your audience.
I wanted to include that because I thought he did a really nice job of explaining things. I want to point out, like I said, I do proofreading all the time. You see, I still miss mistakes because I do so much writing in a day. The most helpful tip I find for proofreading is reading it out loud, especially for grammar errors. When you read it out loud, it just becomes so much more obvious when you've made a mistake. It sounds funny to you. The other thing is having someone else take a look at it real quick. Again, that's not a big problem. You're still learning, even if you're getting someone to kind of, hey, read this over. How does it sound? How does it go? Because you're still going to have to use their ideas and information to help you revise your work. So it's totally valid to have like a writing partner. Could be a friend, another student, could be somebody at the learning center, where you just kind of say, hey, here's what it sounds like. What do you think? What do I need to fix? That kind of thing. Even at home, I do that with people and be like, hey, I wrote this, but it sounds a little funny to me. What do you think? What do I need to change? All right, so we are almost near the end of Unit 3. I think we have one more assignment, which we'll cover on Tuesday. There's no school tomorrow, and we have Monday off for Easter. So everybody, please have a wonderful Easter. Are there any questions before I wrap things up? No? Okay. Wonderful seeing everybody today, and I hope the assignments are going well. I can't wait to see everybody assignments coming in and the final credits for people. Okay, here we are. Oop, I think I did that wrong.